The thing is with capitalism, it is innately exploitive of people. It's always going to exploit someone in order for the other people to make money. The means of production is kind of constrained to only a few people. So only a few people control the ways that money is made through the banks, through big business and stuff like that. People such as in Africa are always going to be the one that are exploited in order for the profits to be made in the Western world.
It's an economic system based on profit, and in order for profit to be made, some people have to exploit others. That's what colonialism was based on, the growth of the British Empire, the French economic empire, the Spanish, and latterly the US, and now the Chinese who are active in Africa. This whole thing is based around economic exploitation and the power that comes with that.
There is a lot of exploitation going on, propping up capitalism, and if you go far enough back, capitalism and colonialism kind of, those systems kind of grew together.
For one economy to thrive, it's going to have repercussions and it's going to have consequences that aren't always visible.
There will always be something in society, in communities, that people want to help or that people need help with.
You don't have rich people unless you have poverty to compare it to.
This research project plans to explore existing paradigms surrounding charity, international aid, development, and the global economic system. The investigation will challenge the UK's residual ideologies in relation to poverty alleviation. In 2014, Bob Geldof's Band Aid celebrated its 30-year anniversary by re-releasing the charity single Do They Know It's Christmas to help victims of the Ebola crisis in West Africa. Their website states that as money comes in the door, it will be spent immediately. Some research suggests that spending money in this way can restrict development and has limited impact, creating a dependency on international aid. Other research argues that it provides instant relief and creates a platform for development agencies to implement long-term plans. Our research investigates whether spending money in this way could create problems rather than alleviate them.
First of all, the thing is with Band-Aid is it's reactionary and it is not for the long term. So I'd say it's actually a very poor way of engaging with issues of development and raising money. You know, the whole idea of a bunch of celebrities who get paid millions of pounds get together to raise money, which actually does very little at all in terms of long-term issues of poverty and development, doesn't work.
It makes it sound as if it's very knee-jerk, as if, you know, money's coming in, and perhaps you need that in terms of dealing with a specific problem. It makes it sound as if they're not considering what they do with the money.
Band Aid is an example of a charity that understands the needs of communities and nations they support. Research from this project has shown that development can be complicated due to a country's social, political, and economic structures merging on an international scale. In order for development to be efficient, a greater understanding of the needs and conditions of those living below the poverty line is required. Some would argue that relief institutions, such as Band Aid, are therefore reactive, only responding to the symptoms of the immediate crisis rather than investing in activities to tackle the causes.
So they've got infrastructure and contacts on the ground, and I suspect that what they mean is, because the criticism is often levelled against charities and giving, that too much money goes to bureaucrats and the organisation and those kind of organisational costs. And I suspect what they're saying is, actually, this money, your money, if you donate, if you buy the record, the money's going straight to the people who need the money.
I think there's been a lot of negativity placed on Band Aid, partly because of the wording that they chose for the song this year. Lots of people found it quite insulting in some ways, very patronising. And in these sorts of circumstances, it's very quick to say, oh, they should have done this or they should have done that. It's not always that easy just to go in and build a centre and have a one-stop shop. You know, obviously there's all the problems that you've got going through the government, the security services that they have there, because there's a lot of trial and error that needs to happen in these sorts of circumstances as well. And that's all the learning, and that's how we develop, and that's how we'll know how to respond in the future.
A lot of what Bob Geldof was doing was raising awareness. There'll always be a mix of funding. There'll be stuff that's spent immediately for emergency aid, and then there'll be the stuff that comes on stream later.
There is a growing view which suggests that charity should be more focused on helping to stabilise and create economic growth in poverty-stricken countries in order to prevent their dependency on international aid. Research suggests that whichever economic system the world adopts, there will always be a degree of exploitation in order to generate monetary gains for those more fortunate in society.
Development and the idea of what is developed is subjective. A community in Africa might not have the same aspirations. People in the developed world or the developing world are being pushed towards the Western-centric view of development, when in actual fact Western civilizations are developed in their own image. You know, African countries can develop in a different context, but it doesn't need to be in our image.
I don't think necessarily that the Western way is necessarily the right way to develop. I think you can look at our society and pick up a number of areas where things are changed for the worse. Of course, there's many benefits.
The science and the technologies, and knowledge of how to apply those to meet the needs of developing nations, that desire, that need will always be there, because there are many benefits to be had from the knowledge that's been developed in developing nations.
The Western model is a model not without problems, and countries which are trying to develop should look at it critically before they decide which path to take.
But to make worldwide assumptions like that is not particularly helpful to the developing nations, to the individuals, and to the future generations that are going to be born into these assumptions.
Much of today's economy relies on the trickle-down approach, where money filters from the wealthy to the poorest in society. Some theorists would argue that empowering those at a grassroots level could be more effective in tackling development issues. This is an approach where charitable organisations could focus more time, effort, money, and resources. Western ideology is not one without its own problems, and assisting other countries can risk imposing that nation's values and beliefs. It is important that countries learn from the best bits from each other's cultures and develop new skills to help assist in the creation of their own unique identity.
These countries, without our help, would be in a much worse situation.
It's all about trying to give them a helping hand so that in the longer run they won't be dependent on aid. There are markets of the future, there are trading partners of the future. There's a lot that's been very successful.
People beginning to change and take power into their own hands.
The results that we've achieved, the difference that's been made, the sense of progress, and the sort of how we've helped people to become self-sufficient, they are astounding.
I think certainly there's good steps that have been made. I think that there's a certain amount of trust that needed to be built, and I think we've started to see it.
China is now the world's fastest growing economy and has emerged as one of the world's superpowers. Within the last century, the country's development has created a vast increase in standards of those previously living in poverty. Charities such as ActionAid have supported its economic growth and have been a vital element in extending the benefits of the nation's development. China is unique as its foundations and practices are not considered capitalist, but a mixture of a variety of economic systems. This raises the question as to whether there are any more effective alternatives to the current capitalist global economy.
It's a bit multidimensional really. There's so many aspects that we can do. I think first off, it would be to change our economic system. You know, at the moment, capitalism isn't working. You know, we're seeing 80% roughly of the world's wealth contains 20% of the population. There's something morally objectionable to that. We need to create an economic system where it's fairer, so that poorer countries such as Africa and Asia have more access to fair trading treaties. Second of all, we need to change our outlook in the Western world. At the moment, we're surrounded by completely extravagant wealth. You know, we lead, you know, lives which are completely in a complete excess, you know, materialistically. So we need to get this kind of concept in the Western world that the problems of poverty in the developing world are problems for us all. You know, we're all human first and foremost, and our differences should not override our similarities. So we need to get into the context that all of us need to fight against poverty.
I would say I felt quite pessimistic about that, really. It takes time and focus, and it can't be kind of dreamed up and one size fits all, kind of you'd fly in, you'd deliver your training course and you go home again. I
don't believe that it's possible to close that gap in that sense, because the very social and economic system that we live in is based upon that kind of social divide.
Development is absolutely key. Like, we need to be investing in sustainable strategies and things which can be handed over to the communities that should be owning them.
There's a certain mentality that needs to be changed on the ground in order to bridge this gap. I still don't think we're necessarily the ones to march in and tell them how to think, but demonstration sites, showing the results, engaging people on the ground in videos and case studies and testimonials, and showing, particularly in countries, for example in Africa, where you've got really good examples of really good work happening.
Do I want capitalism to survive? No is the answer to that, because I think capitalism is responsible for poverty in the world today. And if development is going to be effective, that's where the issues need to be addressed.
Currently, academically, the debate surrounding economics is the idea of a third way. But it's quite, the third way being we could go socialist, communist, or we could go stick with capitalist, and then we have a third way which gets a balance between the two. The problem is a lot of economists point out we don't technically have a third way yet. It's something that needs to be created.
This investigation has discovered that poverty is a social construct formed from the notion of wealth creation. It is evident that charities provide a vital role in addressing immediate crises that communities and societies face on an international scale. There are many improvements that could develop and improve the efficiency of such organisations, such as working alongside communities to tackle root causes of poverty or promoting a specific unique development programme at a grassroots level. With 80% of the current world's wealth confined to a small percentage of people, it is clear that charitable institutions such as Band-Aid can maximise the benefits of public donations, providing a platform for communities and development agencies to work alongside each other to transform the current status of poverty-stricken areas. Charitable organisations have been a contributing factor to successfully creating, sustaining and developing economies across the globe. In the future, if humanity wants to make a fairer, more equal society, time should be invested into understanding and developing the third way of thinking. In the meantime, the wealthy and powerful can help to improve the lives of those less fortunate and help address some of the inequalities that are created by a capitalist economy.